I was speaking to another entrepreneur who's a mentor to me, and he gave me a line that we almost always hear during crisis time. He said, in every crisis, there's an opportunity, right? So he said, you just need to keep your eyes open, like what Marvin's doing right now. He's going online and trying to feed the online space. I think there are a lot of opportunities for entrepreneurs to look at the online space and tap markets there, either providing information or providing sources and supplies. There are still channels to tap right now. Are we just feeding our greed, or are we still thinking soundly? And it really is strategic. And then second, are we doing things that really, really matter? Or are we indulging ourselves or involving ourselves in so many things that really don't matter?
Hey guys, we're in for a treat today. We have Edric Mendoza. As you all know him already, we know he doesn't need any introduction, but he's such a passionate guy when it comes to teaching people how to do their finances right as well. But Edric, before we begin with all of our business finance questions, how are you? How's everything? How's your family in the thick of all of this?
You don't really know how this all suddenly happened and how it's suddenly so real for us Filipinos, diba? I mean, in just a few weeks, it's escalated. We've moved to an extended quarantine. And the things that we would just hear on the news occasionally is now really happening to us. The markets, as you know, are diving, and it's just becoming so real. And you're still in disbelief because you're trying to take in the reality that is here, but you're also asking a big question of, so how long will this last? What's going to happen tomorrow? Is the quarantine really just going to be until mid-April? Some people are saying it might extend for another 2 months. Some are saying it could go on for 200 days. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at and the people I know. Fortunately, our home is well. There's no one sick. As you know, I have 6 kids, so concerned about that, but they're all doing well. We also have several household help, and they're doing okay health-wise. Our driver, we sent him home to be with his own family. But overall, I think the mindset that I've had and I've chosen to embrace is one of hope and one of trust, right? So that's where I'm at, Marvin. And you said you're doing well.
Yeah,
life carries on for her because it's her normal life, right?
Yeah, and this is something that, as what you mentioned also, it's something that you can also prepare for. We've been talking about recessions for quite some time and crashes for quite some time already, that the prudent thing is you prepare for it. So when it happens, you don't want it to happen, but when it happens, you at least have something, you have a buffer that will also protect you. So you don't panic, and instead of using this as a time to panic, you allow yourself to position also for the better later on. Now, here's my question. There's a lot of people watching us that are entrepreneurs, they're freelancers, some of them earn from a commission basis. Now that things are not so good, income is not coming in, do you have any practical tips that they can do while we are in the thick of this situation, while cash flow is cut off, or while for some also they may not have enough savings in this period? What are the things that they could do?
The good thing about entrepreneurs is entrepreneurs can try to make things happen. So since you're asking about entrepreneurs that may have had hits as far as their jobs and commissions are concerned, now's the time to be entrepreneurial. I was speaking to another entrepreneur who's a mentor to me, and he gave me a line that we almost always hear during crisis time. He said, in every crisis, there's an opportunity, right? So he said, you just need to keep your eyes open, like what Marvin's doing right now. He's going online and trying to feed the online space. I think there are a lot of opportunities for entrepreneurs to look at the online space and tap markets there, either providing information or providing sources and supplies. There are still channels to tap right now. And second, and this is a more honest and maybe a more real way to deal with it, now is the time for us to come together. There is only so much an entrepreneur can do because of the limits on an expanded quarantine. I mean, even delivering things online is limited to villages like ours and many other villages, right? So I think now is the time, when I say come together, now is the time for people to, if they need to be on the receiving end, to be humble and be on the receiving end, to reach out to families, friends, really good ones. And if there are actual needs you have, you need to make it felt and say, hey guys, I don't really want to do this, but I need some help. Do you have extra goods there that I can give to my kids as food or anything, right? Or maybe cash that you might need. And then for those that are on the giving end, right? For those that are viewing this, maybe you're not the person who is necessarily taking it, or you're taking it, but you have a buffer that you've been able to set aside. Now's the time to also be giving. And that's what I mean by coming together. And even as I'm saying this, I'm experiencing this. I'm seeing this amongst friends, fellow entrepreneurs, people who are able to see that, the sourcing of income, although we will try and be entrepreneurs and bootstrap, you can also do things like cut back on your spending, right? I think that might be something that one of the guys that Marvin has talked to has mentioned, maybe Randall or Salve, whom I love and respect. So if you've done what you can, you've cut back, you find ways to scale down your lifestyle, your expenses, and you're still wondering, how am I gonna still sustain my living expenses through this uncertain period? You've found ways to augment income through entrepreneurial initiatives to the best of your ability. As I mentioned, come together, be humble and ask for help where necessary. And for those that are on the other side of the equation, look outside where you can be a help or a blessing to other people. And I see that actually has helped a number of people, even in this initial shell shock. We're a week and a half or so, a week and some days in. It has helped people get by. It has. I've seen, Marvin, that moments of crisis like this really sober people to realize that we're not in control, but it also allows us to rise, to bring about heroes, people who are there, who you would not expect, who will suddenly donate and help other people, who will either do that through money or goods because of the businesses that they're involved in or the contacts they have, or time, just being able to do things like, let me find a way to make this for you and have it sent over to your house. There's this amazing, and I think in the Filipino culture, it is the bayanihan spirit, right? Even if you're on the hurting side of things, you find ways to help other people out. So that would be my sort of general perspective on, if you are an entrepreneur or you're someone working and you're taking a hit, how do you respond practically? Tap into that inner entrepreneur, find ways to augment the income, scale back on whatever expenses you can. And then the third, which I said is the more real and honest one, is come together, right? Reach out to people who can help you, make your needs felt, and you'll be surprised who might come to the rescue. And for all those that might be on that hero side or the rescue side, rise up as well. You might be a person who's doing both, like me. I see people are helping out in the needs we have, but I'm also able to help out. And I think it's that dual role that we as Pinoys will see that will really allow us to get through this storm and this crisis.
What's your advice for people who have debts right now? Number one, to people who owe money, and number two, to people who are the one lending. Should they be more lenient? How should they go about it? Pagbigyan na lang nila? Should they waive out the loans or the rent? What's an advice you can give them also? Because I really believe we are sitting on something that we have never seen before. It's happening so fast, and this crash is different from 97. It's different from 2008, where people are scared to go out, people are scared to spend, and because of that happening, it's crippling the economy as well. And there are a lot of people who for example, context, there are some business people who never saw this coming. They expanded, they took out so many loans, and because of that, it's not performing anymore as well. So any advice? Number one, to those who took out loans. Number two, to those who are the ones who lent out money to people.
Our philosophy, even in the personal finance space and the advocacies we do, is an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. Obviously, it would have been better if you didn't leverage using debt. And I have a business that has experienced that also, unfortunately. So what do you do if that's you, right? If you're already there? As I mentioned, now is the time to humble yourself and find a way to work out terms. And what we're seeing is many major companies maybe not so much in the debt space, but in the area of due dates and payments have allowed concessions, right? We've seen a number of that and it's been wonderful. I think it would be great to see more. So to speak to those people who are now in that position where they're the ones who lend, right? I think this is a chance for you to, I like to say, show the human side of the business we get involved in, right? And I think many entrepreneurs understand the essence of that. And that's why many businesses are doing this. They're showing the human side of we can empathize with what you're going through. And we value the relationship we have in the business that we're transacting with you. So to show you that we value you, we want to give you a concession and stretch it as best as is financially viable for the business entity, right? Or the person who is extending the loan in this specific example. And what that will do for you as the person on that side is not only will you show the humanity and strengthen that relationship you formed with a customer, but obviously when the dust settles, this will become a wonderful upside for you because then you have forged a stronger loyalty with the customer or with the person you've lent to in this specific case, right? Now, this is obviously generic advice, obviously depending on the kind of loan you have, the terms that you put into it, the person you have borrowed from, whether it's a personal loan, a friend loan, a family, someone you borrowed from as a family member, or a loan from an institution, then the nuances will vary. But I think the general approach would be the same. Now is the time to humble yourself, go to these persons and find ways to work out terms and see how they respond. That is the best thing I can think of for those that may be in this situation now. And again, for those that are on the lending side, now's the time to be generous and show the humanity without compromising, your commitment to your shareholders and the business viability. There will be a hit, and I think a lot of us will take a hit. Even just us as a family company, if you will, right? Managing a household and the people that we provide for, like my driver who's not driving for me, we're giving him money. We have a helper who's to stay out, who obviously can't be here anymore, we're giving her money. For our employees in the companies we have, we've tried to make sure we still honor what we can pay for, and those that might be, working on a per project or per commission type, we're finding other ways to give them concessions. So now is the time for you as a lender, or if you're on that giving side, to tighten your own belts and find ways to adjust maybe margins and take from your reserves to be able to give to strengthen relationships with the people that you've lent to or the customers that you have. That would be my advice. Wow. And then you will see return as the dust settles. I think the big question for people on the lending side, and maybe even people on the other side of the equation, is how long can we stretch this? That's a question that each company, each individual will have to ask themselves as we go along, right? Because nobody knows. I think, as you're saying, as opposed to many other crises in the world where people kind of respond after. There's a shock, then you respond after. What's making this a little bit trickier is you don't know. I mean, it's an unfamiliar virus. It's scaling out in ways that are different in each country, but in the Philippines, it seems to be escalating really fast. And as you were saying earlier, Marvin, it's so unpredictable. So that is a hard question we all have to answer. And I'm still trying to answer also personally, right? Is how long will this last, and how far can we stretch all of these concessions and this movement? So no straight answer to that right now, brother.
But I like what you said, that you work with the people. A very, very important thing that people need to know is huwag niyo tatakbuhan. Do not, even if you cannot pay it, you try to work with them and you try to at least keep the communications line open, because there will be life after this. And one of the most important things people need to consider is your integrity after this, because if you come out of it very, very well, people will see that and it will propel you later on. And I guess people have to also think that it may be scary right now, but they shouldn't just look at what they see here. They should look at what will happen after as well.
Think long. Right?
Yeah.
Think long.
Yeah.
That's right.
In line with that, we were talking about things during the situation. But given that this shall pass, we will get out of this. What are your key learnings that you found out at this moment that will help you later on, either some things that can help you in your business, or some things that you can do also to prevent bad things to happen should a crisis happen again? Because recessions, crashes, they always come. It just comes in a different way, shape, or form. But what did you learn from this that you can implement later on that will help you in your business? Prior to this, we've been harping about emergency funds over and over and over and over, but people don't find emergency funds to be something that's sexy, because they would always think, it's going to lose out to inflation if I put it in a bank. If I put a larger amount of cash in a bank, it's going to lose out. But now people are seeing, hey, emergency funds really make sense right now. And looking at it from hindsight, a lot of people now know that, 1 month may not be enough, 2 months may not be enough. From this situation, after I recover, I'm gonna build a larger buffer for me and my family as well. So things like that. Is there anything that you got from all of this that later on will change the way you do your business, or change the way you do your finances?
Earlier I said an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure, right? What I'm also learning is, even if that is the case, when there is damage or a wound or injury already, in life, really, there's only two ways to learn things. Two ways. You learn it the easy way, and you learn it the hard way. So like you were saying, we've been talking about emergency funds until our faces have been blue, right? The fact that when you were still doing the show, we were saying, emergency fund na naman, we keep talking about it. We feel like, people should get it by now, but you're right. So, Marvin, I think this crisis and this global pandemic and the damage it will cause to many of us, the damage that it does to us will be the lesson in itself. So for those who don't have emergency funds, and maybe they've heard about it before, and now they're seeing, I wish I had an emergency fund. I think even without us saying anything anymore, they're obviously going to find a way to make sure that as they go through this, they will be prepared when it for any emergencies that will come up in the future, right? So clearly, and I think that will be true for any other specific example. If people said things like, I pulled out a loan to be able to expand my business. I was too aggressive in doing this. And as a result, boom, now they're taking it. They will also learn from this and ensure that moving forward, they will not, they will think twice about whether debt and expansion are actually worth it, and they will reevaluate those things moving forward. Many other specific things will surface at this time, and not just at this point in time where it's about a week and a half, but even will carry on even as we go through this at least 1 month of expanded quarantine, right? So for me, what are the things that have hit me already right now? One of the things that I regretted was, as you were saying, there is a business I got involved in where that was exactly my case. I wanted to expand it, and together with some partners, we put in money, and I got a loan to be able to put in my portion. And I was excited and expectant because, we loved what we were doing, and the prospects for growth were very positive, not just from a financial standpoint, but also from an impact standpoint, which I'm very big on. So we did that. And, now that I'm in this mode, I'm able to step back, and I realized exactly what I said earlier. I realized, and I learned this from a guest that I had before, Will Stein, the guy behind Philip Stein Watches, right? He told me that as he expanded his own empire in the luxury and wellness brand of Philip Stein Watches, he said his strategy in business growth is he always worked with what he got. So he was never affected by crisis, by fluctuations in the market, and the success speaks for itself, right? So I learned that. I said, if I could wind the clock back, and if some of my partners are watching this, I love you guys, and I've seen the gains that we experienced, and I'm sure that, out of this crisis, there may be gains, and I'm confident that there will be, but if I could just step back a little bit, I'm realizing that, maybe the reality is pulling out debt to be able to expand the business. And this is for me, and I'm being very honest. might just be feeding more into greed than into something strategic. Does that make sense? So that's one thing I'm learning, and being honest with you. The second thing I'm learning related to this honest confession to you right now is when you go through situations like this is a unique crisis because it's a crisis that forces us to stop. Forces us. I mean, literally, we cannot leave our houses. We cannot do many things which we would normally do. And because we're forced to stop, it makes us step back and realize how there's so many things we do that aren't really that important. And so we go back to things like, baka we are just doing things because of frivolous reasons like greed, or we just want blind entertainment and feed maybe a materialistic desire of ours when we don't really need to do those things. You know, as a practical example, I've never seen my wallet so happy in the last week and a half, right? Because I haven't had to go and spend anything. I can't go out, I can't buy things, I can't go online and order stuff. So I'm like, okay to ah. You know, what we're really only spending for are things that are food, utilities. Fortunately, we don't have to spend for money yet. So those things, Marvin, those have been things that I'm learning through this mode that I want to sustain. After this settles, I want to make sure that I really ask hard questions in the business space, in the decisions I make, whether it's pulling out a loan or any other decision. Are we just feeding our greed, or are we still thinking soundly? And it really is strategic. And then second, are we doing things that really, really matter? Or are we indulging ourselves or involving ourselves in so many things that really don't matter ourselves? There was a loved one, and I think I was sharing this to you before we went live here. There's a loved one, a really close family relative who back in January we heard was very sick. And I said in my mind, I want to reach out to them. I want to visit him. I want to visit my relative whose father was the one who was very sick. Reach out and see how he's doing. And you know what? My honest confession to you, Marvin, is I in the last 3 months, I wasn't able to do it because I was so busy. Then I found out that he was critical even to this season, and the protocols around it made it much more difficult. And the only time I was able to finally reach out to that relative and call that person was when we found out that his father had passed. And he finally called me. And I regret not having spent time, even if I marked it in my mind. So that matters. People matter. Relationships matter. And there are people that we care about and that we love that we're not able to engage as much because we just get so busy. And in this time where we're forced to stop, I'm able to realize, you know what? Now that I have the time to do this, I want to be able to sustain it, even outside of this. So in crisis like this, we begin to ask ourselves what holds us together. People who are afraid of these debts, for example, or the uncertainty of the markets and its impact to them and their family and their own, future. And what will they do? Where will they get food? Where will they get any of these things? When crisis happens, I begin to realize that what is really inside you and what holds you together, your core convictions, your beliefs, will be the ones that surface and give you peace and clarity. And if there's one thing for me that I realize about these core convictions is these are really what shape and define a person, all the things we're able to buy, all of these successes, these things that happen in this world and in this life are good things. But really, when it boils down to it, it's not really what holds you together. It really is your core faith, your convictions. And for me, what has given me peace, even if I do honestly get a little concerned, and I empathize with so many friends who we've had to work with and counsel and give perspective and even help out, even in the outreaches we're doing in our village and the community nearby and a local church. I realize how faith is such a powerful anchor, and people need to be able to, at this time, ask themselves, what is it that has held them together? What is that core belief? And I want to propose that core belief is a faith in a God who is in full control of all of these things, even if we don't see it. And unless we're able to come to that point where we're able to cling to Him and say, okay, God, I do not know the outcome of the future. I'm going to do whatever I can, the stuff we've already talked about just now. But I really don't know. And the only way for me to have peace is to trust You, because You made us. You're seeing what's happening right now, and You know the end game here. And so unless you come to that point where you put your faith in God and you trust Him, then you will not have peace. There's a verse I just want to share right now. John 16:33 says, Jesus says, "These things I've spoken to you so that in me you may have peace." He wants us to have peace. And he says this as a reality check. In this world, you will have problems, challenges. He calls it tribulation. But he encourages us by saying, but take courage or take heart, have hope. I have overcome the world. He's saying that the only way to be able to see through this crisis, even as we do our part, the only way for us to have peace, and the one thing we must carry through this crisis, even as the dust settles at some point, is this faith in a God and in His Son Jesus, who loves us, who can give us peace even after this crisis is past. So that whatever crisis we have, we will not be storm-free or crisis-free, but we can be crisis-proof. We can have a core that will hold us together, perspective that will allow us to deal with this, whatever the specific problems that crisis might bring about in our lives. So I'm sorry for a very long and lengthy response to your question about what we can learn from this crisis. These are a couple of the things that I'm already seeing, some of the regrets I have, some of the lessons I've had, and I'm hoping that will change me and are changing me now, but I will carry through even later. I'm sure there'll be more, and I'm sure for you, bro, there's a number of them also, but those are a few of mine. So
Galing. I was gonna ask Sana what would be your tips for people who are losing hope already in this point, but you already nailed it. That hope is anchored on who the person is as well. Yeah.
Is to look up, right? If you want to have hope, as I mentioned, now is the time to dig deep and ask yourself a hard question. Why should I have hope? Who will give me that hope? And as I mentioned, I'd like to propose, I've seen this for me, I think it's true for Marvin and many of the people we know who have really solid hope. It's not on circumstances, it's not on us, it's not on our abilities, but it is on a God who sees the big picture, and He only wants what is best for us, even if we don't see it right now. And if you want to be able to experience that, then the best way to do it is to give ourselves to Him and say, okay, God, now is the time I surrender to you. I want to have that peace. I want to have that relationship with your Son, Jesus. I want to receive what He's done for me, so that as I receive this peace, even if there are problems, I can weather these problems, weather the storms, weather the crisis, because I have you in me, and I will have your peace, and I will have your perspective that will see me through.
Amazing. So I hope that people got a lot from this, because at the end of the day, we're all in this together. We're going through the same thing. The whole world is stopping right now, but the goal is never to lose hope and put our eyes on Jesus in all of this. So thank you so much, Edric, for the time, your wisdom, your insight, and I hope that whoever's watching this, you get something from this. You at least one nugget of information that will help you while we're in the midst of this. Just in case people would want to get in touch with you for business or anything after this, how can they reach you as well?
Right, so I continue to engage people on Instagram. I have a handle there, Edric Mendoza 1, and on Facebook, it's Edric E. Mendoza. So you can catch me on either of those channels, and I'll do the best I can to respond. I don't have all the answers. You can ask Marvin, he has more answers than me, or Randall or Salve, but I do the best I can to give answers on areas that I'm passionate about, and they have a lot to do with family. So areas that have to do with family, so money, marriage, parenting, mentorship, things of those nature. That seems to be what's closest to my heart. So thanks, Marvin, for giving me the opportunity to speak about something.
And sakto Instagram, because the guapo ones are in Instagram like you, so you can follow Edric on Instagram.
Thank you. Crazy guy. All right, Marvin.
Thank you so much, Edric. See you all again, guys, and God bless you all.